Hi, and welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast in association with Carwow, the online car-changing destination. Together, we share tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your department, dealership, or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett, or some of you might already know me as Skippy. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hi, welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Today I'm joined with Philipp Sayler von Amende. Now, I'm struggling to pronounce Philipp's name correctly there. So from now on, if I say Philipp, SVA, okay, it's like when I was speaking to John before from Carwow, I called him JV. So Philipp, welcome along to the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Now, Philipp is the Group Chief Commercial Officer for Carwow. But before we get into Carwow and what you're doing there, Philipp, I'd like to know a little bit about your background and get to know you. Looking at your LinkedIn profile, I mean, it's diverse. Working for Porsche Global Sales to start with, some time in Singapore, Bamboo Bikes, and I really got to talk to you about that, and then time with True Car Sales in the United States. It's quite a diverse career, I've got to say, but can you take me right back to the beginning? What drew you to the automotive space to start with?
Well, the very beginning for me was actually I had no choice. My parents are car dealers. So my very first job was in dealerships. And I just talked about this before with Simon. I started washing cars at the dealership before, like getting into it. But that was my starting point into auto.
I love that so much because there's so many times you get the suppliers and so many times people say to us with a training company, well, those who can do, those who can't, they go and teach or they go and do something else. And it gets thrown at suppliers all the time. It's nice to speak to someone who absolutely comes from the car dealer world. So what franchises did you start with your parents?
Back in the days in the 90s, my parents had Renault, and the other franchise was back then Jaguar, Land Rover, and Volvo.
Wow. Okay. That sounds very good. So you started with your parents washing cars then, and then went into Porsche Global Sales. Is that right?
Yeah, that was when I started studying. I really want to look behind the scenes of a manufacturer, and being a car person, is no better brand than Porsche to get into.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for Porsche myself there. And speaking of Matt Watson, doesn't he love Porsche as well? Uh,
Yeah, we have quite some chatter around Porsche here and there.
we could go off on one talking about the latest GT3 RS and everything. So we got to be careful on that one there. So do you remember the very first car you sold, Philipp?
The very first car I sold, I actually don't remember, to be honest. I remember the most profitable car I sold.
Yeah, you are
That
definitely
was,
a dealer. You got to tell us about that.
um, yeah, no, I really started selling in. Well, first I had to wash cars, and I had to go to the workshop repair cars before I was actually allowed to sell.
Wow.
That was my dad was like very
I like
strict
your
on
dad.
that. You got to know the background where
Yeah.
we make money, and then you can sell them, right?
Yep.
Um, and I was actually during at the end of high school, I was setting up my own company at the dealership where people didn't trust in the classifieds, and I was brokering. I was brokering between users that were looking for cars, and was using the dealership to say, "Hi, bring your trust. I can give you a warranty of it."
Yeah.
And I started buying back in the days. That financed my entire university afterwards. So I started buying Chryslers through the Chrysler Bank, and I brokered them through, and that was so profitable. I made like 8.5 grand per car, and that for
Wow.
me was like, yeah, it financed all my
Well,
studies
eight and a half
afterwards.
grand per car, euros I'm talking about. When was that?
Yes,
What sort of year? In the
that was late 90s, early
late 90s.
2000s.
Wow.
That's just it, like it was good sourcing. I got a good source where I got them. And I remember the MD of the Chrysler dealership said to me, you're crazy. I wouldn't buy those cars. They're very hard to sell. And I said, well, but to get them so cheap. And he was absolutely obsessed that he had 2, 3 demo cars that he's like, they're going to break my profitability on those. I said, well, you just got to sell 10 at a high profit, and then you can sell 2 at a loss. And
Yep.
overall, you make a big profit. And he didn't believe me. So I did it on the side, and I made a lot of money.
See, I love that. I absolutely love that. That's what it's all about there. So then you co-founder, and I have to ask about this. So Motor Trade in your blood right from the beginning. Okay. Then you co-founded Zuri Zuri. Okay. And this, if I've got this right, this is Bamboo Bikes. Now, when I read
Yes.
that, I couldn't get my head around a bike made out of bamboo. You've got to explain that for me. Firstly, how do you get into that? Okay. And how does a bike work made out of bamboo?
Yeah, it's a very different story because the red thread through my life was auto, right? It was
Mm,
auto and digital were the two things that, I started at the dealership and then went through my, like experiences at the manufacturers in consulting and then later TrueCar and Carwow. But there was a time after consulting for nearly 3 years, I joined the World Economic Forum, an NGO, right? And I was leading auto there. But I was exposed to all those, like macro trends, what's happening in the
mm,
world, how important is sustainability going to be, how important is it to also be socially active. And for me, it was like, and my hobby is bikes. I'm
mm.
like, in free time, I'm biking a lot, downhill as well as road biking. And so for me, I was like, I saw this, like there's a trend for sustainability and innovation. And, like, and there is, like materials that are really superior to what do you have today? And I did research and I read about somebody, like building, having a social project in Zambia. And so I brought those things together and said, why not do that? And one of my best friends was back then at Adidas and he was looking for a new venture. And I said, why don't we do this together? He did it full time. I did it as a hobby, honestly,
Mm.
like I did it in the evenings and
Yeah.
he ran it. And so we flew down to Zambia and looked at the manufacturing of that. And I just fell in love with it. And bamboo is an amazing material. It's sustainable. It is very light. It is flexible. And so they had a first prototype, and we just worked with them to get it working. And we didn't ever scale it. That was, I think, the
Okay.
biggest challenge and the biggest learning as well. Something that is manufactured and handmade is really, really hard
Mm.
to scale. Also, there were all the challenges because you're bringing bamboo into bike, you have to combine the joints, the carbon fiber or the other natural materials, and every bike is unique, which is
Mm.
amazing on the receiving end, but it's really really hard to manufacture and scale.
Mm. Mm.
Um, but it was a hobby, and like inspired by new materials, sustainability, and the social project behind it. And I did that for 2 years. He still keeps running it on the side, but not as that we couldn't ever scale it to big business. But it was an incredible learning to get something off the ground. I never spent £1 or euro on marketing, but we had incredible PR. Like we were on TV, we were on
Mm.
radio, we won innovation awards, and that really was so satisfying to say, hey, you can really make a difference and create an
Yeah.
amazing product. And everybody, when I still ride this bike every day to work, everybody that sees me in Munich of that bike is asking me, "Oh my God, what is this? Is this
Yeah.
really wood? Is this bamboo?" And it looks amazing. It rides amazingly. It's sustainable, and it's just yeah, it was a fun project, I would say.
That is just so interesting. I'm not going to talk about bikes or podcasts, but does the flexibility of the wood, does that help in riding it? Because I imagine there
It
must be
makes it.
flexibility.
It's not too flexible, right? It
Okay.
can't be too flexible because otherwise
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like but it's also not too tough, right? And by combining the joints with carbon fiber, it gives it the stiffness you need.
Mm.
But when you run over, like a stone or something, it
Yeah.
gives a little bit of flex in it. So it
Yeah.
has the perfect combination of flex, but also tough enough.
Wow.
And yeah, no, it rides really nicely.
Wow. Okay. So then, if I've got this right, management consultant with Arthur D. Little, and then leadership roles with TrueCar. So, can I ask, in those early years there, maybe with TrueCar there, what are some of the biggest lessons you learned from those early years?
Yeah, I think I'd start with consulting because I think consulting is probably the best school on earth
Mm.
to, like think strategically, structure things through, like get your processes in order. But at the same time, also, like that pivoting you constantly have to do, like high up, look at the strategy. What's the big picture, right?
Yep.
Where are we going? What do we have to do? But then also breaking that down into a very clear roadmap on, like these are the steps we're taking to get there.
Mm.
So I think my time at management consulting gave me the best school in the basics, right? How to, like really be organized, but also go up and down
Mm.
in your thinking constantly. And then TrueCut for me, honestly, was my first exposure to a marketplace. How do you
Mm.
run a marketplace? How do you, like balance the customer focus? Where yes, a marketplace always starts with the customer, but then when you scale it, and I just joined when they IPO'd. got to balance that, right? You cannot be customer only. You're like, who's your customer, right? People buying a car, or people actually,
Yeah.
like using you to sell their cars as dealers? And I think it's got to be an absolute balance between the two. You got to attract the customers to the platform, but you've got to have a really, really good product for your partners to work with you, and to be, to have also profitable business for them. And for me, that was a perfect combination. It was an early, really, really good school to get into that. And from a leadership point of view, I met one of my, I'd say now, like he's a coach, he's a friend, John
Mentor.
Krafchick, the guy who ran Waymo afterwards. And he, for
Okay.
me, was really, he taught me so much in a way, like how are you being bold, like think really, really big and have a American positive attitude to
Mm.
everything, right? Like absolutely optimistic about everything. Like you could come out of a crisis meeting and he'd be smiling and grinning and say, hey, listen, we learned so much, let's now attack. And that being German, coming from a dealership, I was always worried. Everything was like, oh my God, this is not going to work. That's difficult. And that really taught me my time in America in general, but especially the through car and Sean to really, how do you break through barriers? How do you really think big and innovate, but scale a marketplace? That is not easy, right? It's a tough undertaking as well.
When you talk about the two different, the dealer and the consumer, I suppose there's three really, isn't it? You sit right in the middle between the consumer. I'm talking Carwow now, but it's the
Yeah,
consumer, it's the dealer, but then of course the OEM. And
yeah,
that's got to be such a difficult juggling act because all three, I suppose the ultimate goal is we want the same thing. We want happy customers in a car.
yes.
Right. So the ultimate goal for all three is the same. But there's different pressures there, aren't there? Because the dealer wants to make as much as they can. The OEM probably doesn't care about profitability in the individual deal. Okay, they probably want units. I'm taking. I'm guessing that would be what they want. That's got to be a different juggling. How do you balance that? Those three different
I,
parties.
100% is those three parties. I think when we started, or also in the US, was slightly different, right? You mainly it was dealer and customer.
Mm, yeah,
In Europe, especially over the last couple of years, OEMs changing their tactics or strategies on, like some of them work in a traditional dealer model, others work in agency, and others work in full direct sales.
yeah,
So you got to juggle the three. And I think though, like overall the we all want to achieve the same thing, right? We want to
yep,
get customers into cars. The
yep,
only difference is that for us as a marketplace, it doesn't matter what brand it is or what model
yeah,
it is. We want the best car, the right car for the user, what the end user wants to get into. So we're neutral in this space. Well, yes, a manufacturer and a dealer have the same interest. They want to get them in their car,
yep,
right? And they want to get volume, but they also want to get profitability for the dealer, which the OEM cares less about. Yes,
yep.
true. For them, it's more mainly a volume game. But listen, I think it is, like listening, what is the main driver behind each of them, and
Mm,
then aligning them to say we have a common goal, right? And how can we make this happen? What's working best, and what we've learned over the last couple of years is when you get the manufacturer and the manufacturer and the dealers aligned for co-funds or similar,
mm,
right? Where you say, hey, you have the same goal. So why, dear manufacturer, don't you support the dealer? If like pay some of the leads that they get from Carwow. And when they do that and they lean in, that's when it really works best for both of them because they say, hey, like we have a common interest and the manufacturer actually supporting us to work with a platform like Carwow to help us scale our volumes. And that way, like they're absolutely aligning their interests rather than, hey, one wants the one and the other one needs more the profitability because they are taking a share of the costs away from them.
yeah. I want to. Lots of people listen to this podcast. Philip, they're senior managers, they're investors, they're like your parents, I suppose, and also we have OEMs listen to it. Now, you bought True Car's strategy to Europe, if I've got that right. There must be some challenges there, starting from scratch almost. You've done it with the bikes, okay, by yourself, and put your
Yeah.
own funding into it. But taking True Car, that's got to be a challenge launching that. And can you talk me through some of the challenges and what you learned from there? And then I want to talk about how you did that, I suppose, with Carwow in Germany.
Yeah, I think, listen, TrueCar never launched in Europe is the point. We never
Okay.
did, right? I met the founder and CEO back in the days, early on, like 2 years before I actually joined TrueCar. We were always talking about, the potential of Europe because car buying is fundamentally the same. It's the same challenge if you are in the US, in China, or in Europe, right? It fundamentally, at a high level, psychologically, it works the same.
Mm,
The challenge is in the detail. Every market is different, right? You go to the UK, it has its differences of massive dealer groups, and which is not as I would say don't have the same amount of dealers around as you have in the US or in Germany. You have, the UK and Germany being way more of a build to order market, or traditionally, yes, that is changing now as well. But when we go back those 10 years now, that was the case. Well, you look at the US, it's a pure built stock market. There is no
mm,
orders. You go to Spain, it's very similar. It's only a stock market. And then you go even further down, finance options are different across the markets. Legal systems are different across the markets. The emissions are,
mm. Yeah.
regulatory rules around how you show emissions are different. So for me, though, doing at TrueCar, looking at the different markets in Europe, and I was focusing on the UK,
Mm,
Germany, and France initially, I learned a lot about, what does it take to launch in those markets? In a way, on where can you go in and, you use your technology and your platform as a starting point, but where do you need to localize? And honestly, this is where I met James Hind,
mm,
because, I was in the UK, I was talking to big dealer groups, I was talking to James back then. I think it was 8 people at Carwow. They were just starting. Um, and I learned a lot about, how Carwow is doing it and what their sweet spot is in the market. And that for me was, I would say, the basis to then, do what I did at Carwow. But
mm,
TrueCar never launched for a reason. They had the IPO and they had so many different priorities that in the end, at TrueCar, after building the European go-to-market, I was running their OEM and media business because they put it on hold. They said we
mm.
cannot do all those investments at the same time, which though led me to I was always obsessed to launch this in Europe, to join Carwow later on and
Yep.
launch Germany.
So then into Carwow. So there were 8 employees right from the beginning. You've been there right from the beginning then, okay? And you started, have I got this right, Carwow, Germany? You launched that in 2016? Have I got that
Yes.
right? Okay. I've got to ask the question then. You start Carwow. What did your parents think? They're car dealers, okay? What conversation happened there around the Christmas dinner table?
See, I think every chop change I had, my parents thought I'm crazy. Like, why don't you come back to the dealership and work for us? Still, my dad asked me 5 years ago, I think, again, like, why don't you come back? No, I mean, the first reaction is like, are you crazy? You're joining those guys that, like you're going to build a race to the bottom. I said, no, 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 listen,
Even
this
you
is
get that,
not.
the race to the bottom.
I mean, the race to the bottom, that was, like
Yeah,
everywhere where a new car player
yep,
came into the market, that was the thing. Oh, it's going to be a race to the bottom. And I said, no, listen, but there is a customer proposition, but there is also dealer proposition. I'm
yeah,
helping you to get into the digital age. I'm helping you to reach those customers that are shopping online. And price is an element, but price is an element offline, and price is an element everywhere. We know that in car buying, price is always the number one thing a customer has in mind, but there's way more to that. And I remember the first time I pitched it to my brother, he's like, hell no, I'm not joining. And then half a year later, he joined and he became the most successful Volvo dealer on the platform in Germany. And he sold at times 30% of his cars through Carwow. And he's like, oh my God, this is working, because he could extend his reach of his location. He was
yep.
suddenly not selling only in, like a 30-mile radius, but a 100-mile radius. And he's like, oh, I'm getting customers I would not have gotten otherwise. And they found me on Carwow. So he absolutely loved it. And so he has been leaning in more and more. And I think that was the journey we took on. But the first reaction was, you're crazy.
Yeah. See, what I love when you look at the data, okay, it's people aren't buying just because it's the lowest price car they can find there. People are buying because of a location and service and how quick. And we train lots of salespeople. That's what we do as a training company. And it's speed of the response, the quality of the response. Because you know what? People, especially when we're going into an agency world, okay, it's the same price on new car
Yep.
everywhere there. And you would say, well, hold on, why would Carwow be around in an agency world? It's fixed price anyway. But of course, some of the biggest investors are Mercedes-Benz going down the agency model,
Yeah.
Volvo agency model there because they understand it's not just the race to the bottom, it's how well you engage with that customer there. But I just thought it'd be
Yep.
really interesting to think how your own parents, your own brother, thinking you're mad there because that's what I thought right at the beginning. In fact, I said to JV on the podcast, we had clients say, why are you working with the devil? Carwow, what are you doing? Okay. It's like, guys, no, no, no. I've been to their offices. It's absolutely the data absolutely blow my
Yeah.
mind of what they're actually achieving there.
I can tell you, like from the get-go and still today, the number one factor to be successful digital is service. Is
Yeah.
that person you talk to. When you come into the door, and I kept saying this early days, it's like imagine a customer walking into your showroom. They're not walking into your showroom, they're contacting you through a platform like Carwow. Why would you treat them any differently? And
Yes.
actually, it's even worse. You have to treat them even better because they have five other doors open and they don't have to travel there. And it is all about the number one conversion driver is that person. It's that
Yes.
salesperson that you actually have on the phone that is answering your
Yep.
messages, that is getting you, like that is your contact point. And that is your chance to win as a
Yes.
dealer. That is your chance to win. And you should do everything to win that.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. It's anyway, listen, let's talk about um oh sorry. This is I am gonna ask this. What's the biggest misunderstanding about CarWow? Okay. And again, when it launched, it was the race to the bottom, whatever. What do you think is still the biggest misunderstanding?
I think it's as you said, the biggest misunderstanding from dealers is still as it relates to the bottom is only about price, which is not, right? It's
Yep.
price, it's location, it's service, and service is the best, the most
Okay.
important. If you now think of it even further, like the second most important thing is they still think, like we're only a new car platform. And we're not.
Yeah.
We do new cars, but you can also source cars from Carwow. This JV talked about this in your last podcast at length, like how big this part of the business has become for us and how
Yes.
important this is also for dealers, as we know. And we have now moved into used cars as well. And like we've become a car changing destination for customers, but that also means for a dealer oh my God, I have one place to go where I can advertise my new cars, I can advertise my used cars, and I can source cars. And we now start building the connections between those. And that is not understood yet. When I source cars, I can immediately list them on Carwow for a used car and sell them again. And it's one destination rather than, like working the three different suppliers.
So new cars, are they still the main attraction for CarWow, or is it used cars now? Because if you're entering the used car space for advertising, can you really make an impact in that space? What gives you the confidence that can be a success when, let's be honest, lots of other people have tried and failed there?
Yep. I think the biggest difference is we already have the users. We had
Mm.
200 million visitors across the Carwow Group platforms last year, and
Wow, 200
two
million.
two-thirds of those are also interested in used cars.
Mm.
So I think the biggest difference to anyone else that has tried that, they've built supply and they've failed to get customers. We start the other way around. We have millions and millions of customers on the platform. Yes, the main attraction is they come through, our phenomenal content. They come because they know us through YouTube, where we have more than 10 million subscribers with Matt Watson, and they read our reviews and they come in that way. But two-thirds of them today are considering a used car. So actually, you'd be stupid not offering used cars, right? Because if you're offering them new cars, we're limiting the choice we give our customers that come to the platform. And I think that's fundamentally the number one difference. Today, we already have the customers.
So you do
That
have, you still have the giants like Auto Trader, okay? They are the giants out there. I know you've got the customers there. Are people still going to go to Auto Trader first, okay? Or are dealers really going to advertise through CarWow? And are you confident you've got enough customers to give the dealer the eyes on the bonnet, the eyes on that car?
100%. I think Auto Trader won't go away, right? Auto
Mm.
Trader will always be there, and they have a big brand. They have been around for a long time, and people go there when they look for a used car. But the thing is, there is like those 200 million I've been talking about that come to Carwow on our sites to look for a new car, and very often they end up buying a used car. And so we have a really credible, huge audience that is ready to buy used cars. And we've seen that. We've grown the eyeballs on used cars last year over 100%. And that is continuing that growth. As we're also investing more into used cars and we have more supply,
Mm.
there is more consideration, there's more conversion, and there's more people looking at it. But also the cost of living crisis simply leads to the fact that, like they're considering both, but they come through the new car angle to the platform, which is actually amazing because you get a really high value customer, right? It's customers that are ready to spend more, they're buying higher
Hmm.
value cars. They normally are much better in finance because they don't get rejected. They come
Mm.
they come from the top, right? And it leads me back to my Porsche analogy I keep always saying, right? When I started at Porsche in the 90s, everyone was like, how could you have launched the 996 after the Boxster, right?
Yep.
The headlights. And it was always like, that was a once in a lifetime they made that mistake where they, like they went at the bottom of the market first and then at the high end. You always come from the high end and go down. And this
Mm.
is how I view it. The Falcons, so they come through the new car, but they end up buying a used car. And it's such an attractive audience to tap into for dealers that like you don't want to lose out.
Yeah. Okay, so cost of advertising. If I speak to our dealer partners and the people who listen to this, they know that Auto Trader is, can I call them the necessary evil? Okay, their prices keep going up all the time, but I need to be on Auto Trader, otherwise I just don't get the inquiries through, and it keeps going up there. Can I ask the high cost in advertising? How is Carwell going to approach the pricing? How is that going to differ? What value are you going to aim to offer the dealer that maybe the auto traders can't do?
Yeah, I think the what I've talked a little bit earlier is how we connect the different products together, right?
Mm.
Cost of advertising digitally is continuously going up in any channel, right?
Mm.
And what the big advantage is that we can, like combine our offering between new, used, and sourcing. And we're just launching as we move faster and we're putting massive investments into used cars. We've launched a double deal for our dealers. So it's that if you source on Carwow, you can advertise for free. Those cars you source, you can advertise for free. Because like you buy them through our sourcing platform, and we can immediately put them live on our used car. If you give us all your stock, those that you buy through us, you get for free. So there's a huge benefit because you don't have to pay for those cars. And I think
Wow.
this is one big one where it's a massive differentiator out there. And at the same time, also, like our core business is the sourcing and the new car business. So we don't live off the used car business as Auto Trader, and we don't need to make all the profit from that. So it is the combination of bringing the three businesses together that, in sum, it's going to be cheaper for a dealer.
Yeah, we've got more and more dealers using the likes of motorways, of course, yourself for sourcing their cars now, because, of course, they can touch the car, they can see the car. You go to BCA auctions, okay, you can't do anything. Yes, it's gone through We Buy a Car, and the dealer is, what's it like because they can't drive it. Of course, dealers tell me they love the idea with CarWow. Okay, they can actually touch the bonnet, drive the car, make sure it's right before they actually do it. Okay, so I actually love the idea. They could straight away get their car advertised once they buy it. And that's the double deal. Source the car through CarWow, get it advertised straight away. That's going to be really strong, really strong.
And
And that's,
and 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 longer term, there's even more, right? We have tested this. This is not out there yet, but this is the product developments we are putting in the coming months. You source it digitally on Carwow, and you can list it immediately because we have all the pictures, we have all the history, we have all the details about the car already. On average, it takes what 20-25 days from sourcing a car until you have it on your court to advertise. Imagine, like we bring that time down because we can advertise it immediately.
the stock
We bring
turn.
that time down. You sell it before you actually have it on your forecourt. You
Yeah.
massively bring down your financing costs. You massively
Yes.
bring down your costs, and you improve your margins. And that is in the end where dealers will be winning, working the car well, because to say again, we connect the different pieces together.
Yeah, what that does, the stock turn's got to be sensational. So you've already got feedback from dealers using this at the moment. You're trialing it. And what's their feedback like?
Dealers that have started working with us on used are absolutely thrilled. They love it, right? Because we give them the eyeballs, and it is working really, really well for them.
Okay. So what's the roadmap for Carwow over the next 12 months then? So used car, continue down the used car option.
Yeah, I think there's lots and lots to do, right? JB talked a lot about in the last podcast and what we do on sourcing. There's a lot innovation happening there and coming. But we talk about my area, which is, the marketplace side where, it's all about new car and used car selling and leasing as well. The big investment is in used. It is, and there's a lot to do, right? To improve the experience for customers, but also for dealers to build them dashboards to give them
Mm.
visibility on how it is working. And then, start working on those innovations, double deal, and then, direct advertising their source cars with us. But it is absolutely, accelerating that used car proposition for customers, but also for dealers.
Yeah, love it, love it. So listen, if there's one message you could leave with the dealers, listen to the podcast, what would it be?
I, I think it's that be open-minded and try, right? This is always coming from the dealer world is always like, often there's a hesitation. Let's see how those things are going. And then no, embrace change. Try a new platform like Carwow and used cars. See how it goes. Because it's an incredible deal. It's an incredible audience we have to offer and a good alternative and addition to what they do, the big player in the market.
Yeah. Listen, your passion for the industry is it's still there right from the beginning. How do you still become so enthusiastic about it? What gets you up in the morning?
In the morning, 2 to 3 cups of coffee.
Caffeine.
Caffeine, and my love for cars. I do love the auto industry, and I do love what we can do, the technologies, the digital, and it won't stop, right? There's always new things. There's always better ways to improve, how we can advertise cars, how we can get better products for our end customers, but how we can also, get better tools out there and can use our data at Carwow to help dealers sell more.
Yeah. Yeah, I was speaking to JV about the data because you have so much data on actually when inquiries come through to dealers, what people are actually saying, what communication that ends up in a deal. Okay. Not just gut feel, not just, oh, I think this will work, that'll work. You have so much data that absolutely works. And I just love the idea of looking at all that data and teaching our partners, this is what works, guys. This is what actually, it's not the race to the bottom. It's not just money. It's the service. It's how you do it. And I gotta say, used cars is, you're not known for that at all. So it's going to be
Nope.
interesting to watch that space there. And when you first say used cars, every part of me is thinking Auto Trader or the equivalent in Germany and Spain. How are you going to take those on there? But you have the customers. And that's what we want as dealers. We want the customer, and you have them, don't you? So it really does join all the dots
Absolutely.
together. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's it, right? We have the customers, and as you said, we have the data. We know what customers want, right? Across all makes and models, and across all dealers. And this is, I think, again, as a marketplace, we know exactly what works, what doesn't work, and we help dealers to improve, and to help them to improve their processes, improve how they work on the deals, and what answers work, what don't work. As you say, is one example. We've piloted in one of our markets as well. How can you use AI to do that, right? To do a pre-qualification. It's incredible what you get from that, right? And it's just like using all that data and helping dealers in that space, really getting into a brand new audience that they haven't tapped into so far.
Yeah. Well, listen, while I've got you here, EVs, and I'm talking about the UK market. I don't know about Germany and Spain there, but used EVs, if I look at Auto Trader now, 6% of the cars are electric vehicles on Auto Trader. Now, that makes sense because the push has really just been the last 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
So those cars are going to start coming through now. It's going to be bigger and bigger. Used electric vehicles, the price of them was dropped off a cliff. Okay, we know that was driven probably 18 months ago when Tesla significantly dropped the price on it. Um, Used car dealers, listen to this. there's some nervousness about getting into the used EV market. Um, they're going to have to get their head around used EVs, aren't they? So, can I ask you, do you see used EV prices still dropping off a cliff, sliding there? Do you think they're going to reach the bottom and it's going to start leveling out when more and more electric vehicles come through? They're going to have to, right?
Absolutely. I think this is a typical evolution you see with new technologies, right? The
Mm.
early adopters go in, they take a higher risk, they're ready to pay a higher price. And we are at this pivotal moment where we move from an early adopter market to a mass market. And as it becomes mass market, there's more data out there, those residuals will stabilize. And as the pricing stabilizes on new, that is where the pricing on used will stabilize.
Yeah.
And I think as a dealer is again, there's dealers out there that, especially we talk stock sourcing, they're smart, right? They say, hey, where's the opportunities now, and which cars am I sourcing that I can make a margin on? But definitely, as EVs are growing on the new car side, there will be a used car market because there's users that can't afford the new EV, but they want to go into an EV, and they look for the opportunity. But I think the biggest drop in residuals is what we've already seen.
Okay, so it is starting to level out now. Because I hear some people saying, hold on, electric vehicles might just be like a mobile phone. And what they mean by that is because new technology is growing so fast, the range is just increasing all the time there. Is it going to be a situation because people want the 800-kilometer range now, okay, or the 400-kilometer range car is nowhere any good? That, is it going to continue when the new cars are getting better and better? It makes the used car.
Well, I think it's always a question on where will residuals settle, right? We
Hmm,
had this, go back 30 years ago, we had this with the combustion engine. Every new model was better quality, right? They
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
rust anymore. And they suddenly, like your engine had better fuel economy, et cetera, et cetera. So we had this in the combustion world as
mm,
well.
mm,
It's just that we reached a technology maturity on those where, residuals were very stable around, certain ranges. And I think again, you go into new technology, yes, you have more fluctuation at the beginning, especially as those come out. But the question still is, batteries are not getting worse. If you look at the battery health after 3 years,
mm.
after 4 years, it's not like mobile phones that fall off a cliff, right? It's
Yes,
actually they're really, really good.
yeah,
And so I think it's a matter of stabilization and moving into a mass market where you have enough data and you have enough
yeah,
trust in the market where, hey, no, there is a decent market and it's stabilizing. How much further down can it go, right? Like it's
yeah. Because new cars, it's no longer early adopters. They've gone through that. New car people,
Yep,
listen, this year, 28% of the cars have to be
that's
electric
it.
in the UK. There, people who buy electric first time round, second time round, what is it? 94% of people buy electric again. So
Yeah,
people love them when they get into them. So that will flow into the used car market. Um,
absolutely.
it's definitely going to do that. While I've got you as well, I've got someone who understands technology and the motor trade. AI. I've just come back from the NADA conference, and you've been out there, I'm sure. I love to go and see what's new and what's happening, and
Yep.
super impressed with Techion, the new DMS provider in the States that's coming to Europe and doing great, great things with AI. Are we as car salespeople, are we going to be the dinosaurs? You see, these chatbots can take the inquiries, they know what the customer's looking for. Um, I want you to look into the future, 10 years down the track, 20 years
Yep.
down the track. Your brother, your parents, are they still going to employ car salespeople in a dealership? Or will they just employ AI? What, what's the future going to be?
The future's going to be you need both.
Yeah.
We're human beings, and buying a car is a very, very, very complex purchase, right? And it's not getting easier with EVs and lots of new technologies, right? People trust people.
Mm.
And I fundamentally believe AI will transform how we sell cars. And I think, like everything you just said, and well, I said we tried it, inquiry handling, they can do the front part, right? They can answer the easy questions, like
Yeah.
probably better than a salesperson on, like what's that technology, what's that new feature, what is this? They can do that better, but they cannot, they cannot transfer the knowledge about, like the driving experience and, like all the different options they have on finance and what's better depending on their circumstance. Where They cannot go into that, and it is selling is a very, very emotional thing, as car buying is a
Yes.
very, very emotional
Yes.
process. And I think there will be elements that will be taken by AI and will make sales people, take some of the hassle off there as well. Some of the things are actually not the enjoyable bit, but we still love to buy from people, and I think it won't go away. It will change, but it won't go away.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's three sales in any sale. You got to sell yourself first, the product second, and then the deal. And you're right. Asking a some AI what specifications this got. Okay, the 992.2
Yeah.
GTS. Okay, is the turbo really going to have turbo lag or not? AI will know that information inside out, back to front, because it gets the data, gets the information. But actually, it can't build that trust and rapport. It can't say, "Hey, listen, I've been working at this Porsche dealership for the last 18 years." Okay, on that trust, because people, it's still a big old chunk of money, and cars are a
Yeah.
passion. So I'm glad to hear someone's in this digital space and the motor trading space that we're going to be here in 20 years' time.
100%.
Yeah. Listen, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Philip, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. How do people find you? What's the easiest way to people find you? Reach out on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is the best place, yes.
Perfect. And people listen to this, start getting your head around Carwow and the used car proposition there. The double deal, that sounds absolutely brilliant. It's not launched yet, I understand.
It's not launched yet, but it will be launching officially as a thing. But we already offer it to dealers. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Simon.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn.